On September 19, 1944, near Saint-Lô, France, Corporal Thomas Bennett crouched behind his M5 3-inch anti-tank gun, watching 5 German Panther tanks advance at 800 yards. His crew had been waiting for 6 hours, watching the Panzers maneuver. The moment for action had arrived, but Bennett knew following the textbook would guarantee their deaths. The M5 was powerful, capable of penetrating 3 inches of armor at 1,000 yards, but the approved firing angles were critical, no more than 15 degrees elevation. Firing outside these limits risked damaging the recoil mechanism or even destroying the gun. The problem was their position. The hedgerow was elevated 12 feet above the field, and the Panthers were moving through a shallow depression. To use the approved angles, Bennett would have to wait until the Panthers climbed out of the depression and came within 300 yards. At that range, the Panthers, with their excellent optics and 75mm gun, could easily spot the muzzle flash and destroy the American position with their first shot. The Panthers' 80mm frontal armor, sloped at 55 degrees, was nearly impenetrable at close range. To kill a Panther from the front, crews had to let it get close enough to kill them first. Bennett had seen this terrible math play out before, losing friends and watching anti-tank crews die following Doctrine. In North Africa, his battalion lost 14 guns in 3 weeks, fighting Panthers and Tigers. Bennett's commander, 2nd Lieutenant James Walsh, was only 8 weeks in France and insisted on following the manual, telling Bennett to wait for the proper firing angle and the textbook shot. But Bennett, an 11-month veteran who had served in North Africa, had spent 6 hours calculating the angles. He knew waiting was suicide. There was only one way to hit them now: elevate the gun to 32 degrees, more than double the approved maximum. This high trajectory would drop the shell onto the Panther's thinner top armor, which was only 40mm thick. A 3-inch armor-piercing shell hitting at a steep angle would punch through easily. The risk was enormous. The recoil forces at 32 degrees tripled the stress on the gun's springs and mount. Bennett knew he was gambling, but he chose to risk the gun, which could be replaced, to save his crew, which could not. The secret spreads. Lieutenant Walsh, stunned, made notes in his inspection log, writing that the gun had engaged enemy armor at extended range, carefully omitting the forbidden elevation angle. Within an hour, 3 other gun crews came to Bennett's position, eager to learn the technique. Bennett showed them the math, warning them of the recoil stress. They didn't care. The technique spread through the 2nd Battalion in 3 days, from corporal to corporal. By September 22nd, 9 guns were using high-angle shots. Staff Sergeant William Parker, after watching Bennett's engagement, adopted the method and successfully destroyed 3 Panthers near Ver at 850 yards. Parker told other gun commanders, drawing diagrams in the dirt. When one asked about a court-martial, Parker replied he'd rather face one than watch more crews die following a manual that didn't work. The physics of plunging fire. The high-angle shot worked because of geometry, gravity, and German doctrine. German engineers had designed the Panther to withstand frontal attacks, with 80mm of sloped armor on the front. However, they never anticipated shells coming from above. The top armor was only designed to stop shrapnel. Physics favored Bennett. A shell coming down at 30 degrees or more had enough force to punch through the thin top armor. Gravity accelerated the shell on its descent, concentrating all its energy on a thin surface. Furthermore, shooting from above meant hitting the flat horizontal surfaces of the tank, eliminating the possibility of deflection that sloped frontal armor provided. German tankers were trained to look for threats at low-level angles, not to expect plunging fire from direct-fire anti-tank guns. The risk to the M5 gun was genuine. The recoil forces at 32 degrees tripled the stress on the gun's springs and mount. Bennett knew he was gambling, but he chose to risk the gun, which could be replaced, to save his crew, which could not.
The secret spreads. Lieutenant Walsh, stunned, made notes in his inspection log, writing that the gun had engaged enemy armor at extended range, carefully omitting the forbidden elevation angle. Within an hour, 3 other gun crews came to Bennett's position, eager to learn the technique. Bennett showed them the math, warning them of the recoil stress. They didn't care. The technique spread through the 2nd Battalion in 3 days, from corporal to corporal. By September 22nd, 9 guns were using high-angle shots. Staff Sergeant William Parker, after watching Bennett's engagement, adopted the method and successfully destroyed 3 Panthers near Ver at 850 yards. Parker told other gun commanders, drawing diagrams in the dirt. When one asked about a court-martial, Parker replied that he'd rather face one than watch more crews die following a manual that didn't work. By the end of September, the technique had spread to about 25 guns. The gunners kept it quiet, not discussing it in front of officers. The results were immediate and measurable. In August, the 2nd Battalion lost 7 anti-tank guns. In September, they lost 2. American crews were destroying Panthers at better than a 2-1 ratio. Division headquarters noticed the improved statistics, but attributed it to better training, not to gunners deliberately violating protocols. The technique had limitations. It required an elevation advantage, and the recoil stress was cumulative. Bennett's gun lasted 18 high-angle shots before a recoil spring fractured. Parker's lasted 22. But even with these limitations, the technique saved lives, allowing crews to kill Panthers from ranges where the Germans couldn't return effective fire. German Panther crews first reported the unusual attacks in late September, mentioning shells coming from above. They initially dismissed it as artillery, but soon realized American anti-tank guns were using impossible elevation angles. Their intelligence confirmed the Americans were using the same M5 3-inch guns, but in a new way. German commanders tried to adapt by avoiding low ground, but this limited their mobility. Some tried aggressive rushes, but a single, well-placed high-angle shot could permanently stop a 60-ton tank. The psychological impact was significant. The Panthers' confidence in their frontal armor was gone, and commanders began looking up instead of forward. Oberst Hendrik Becker, who lost 8 Panthers to plunging fire in 2 weeks, warned his commanders that frontal armor was no longer sufficient protection. German crews tried to reinforce their top armor with spare track links, but the modifications provided little actual protection against the 3-inch armor-piercing shell. By mid-October, the 5th Panzer Army estimated they had lost 30 to 40 tanks to high-angle fire. The Americans were exploiting a design weakness the Germans never anticipated, using a technique that officially didn't exist. The high-angle firing technique never became official World War II doctrine. Engineers reviewed it, calculated the stresses, and recommended against it. But it was too late to stop. The kill ratios were undeniable. In October and November 1944, American anti-tank battalions destroyed 163 Panthers, with 28 confirmed high-angle shots. The Army issued a technical bulletin in December, stating that firing above 20 degrees was not recommended, but it didn't prohibit the practice. Every gunner understood the Army knew what they were doing and wouldn't court-martial them for staying alive. Thomas Bennett survived the war, destroying 11 Panthers, 7 with high-angle shots. His gun went through 4 sets of recoil springs. He never received a medal for the technique. In 1996, a military historian found references to the high-angle fire in German reports, tracked down Bennett, and asked him why he tried it. Bennett simply said the approved method was getting people killed, and someone had to try something different. The historian estimated that the technique accounted for 8 to 12% of Panther losses, translating to 60 to 80 tanks destroyed and saving an estimated 40 to 60 American gun crew lives. Bennett's innovation profoundly influenced post-war anti-tank weapon design. Modern anti-tank missiles like the Javelin use the same top attack profile. The technology is different, but the underlying physics, using elevation and gravity to attack the weakest point, is identical. Bennett, who died in 2009, never received official recognition for changing how American crews fought German armor. His M5 gun is now on display at the Fort Sill Artillery Museum with a placard that mentions its effectiveness when used properly. It does not mention that properly sometimes meant ignoring the manual and elevating to 32 degrees. True innovation in war often happens not through official channels, but through soldiers who trust their calculations over their manuals. If you found this story as compelling as we did, please take a moment to like this video. It helps us share more forgotten stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to stay connected with these untold histories. Each one matters. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Thank you for watching, and thank you for keeping these stories alive.